On July 23, 1993, aimed at political events that reshaped the course of history, the first president of Armenia, Levon Ter-Petrosyan, made a statement that remained concealed until now. A few days ago, a rare video surfaced on social media in which the then sitting head of the state asserts that the ethnic cleansing of Azerbaijanis that took place in Armenia in 1988 played a key role in the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the establishment of independent Armenia.
Armenia and Karabakh have been completely cleansed of other nations. I repeat once again, this was a 600-year-old problem. Its significance will be felt by the Armenian people for another 600 years. Imagine if today, in Armenia, there were 170,000 people of other nationalities who had been here before 1988. Today, we wouldn't have a state. We wouldn't be able to defend our northern and eastern regions or protect the Sevan area. Moreover, we would have acquired 3 new problems. Remember that in 3 regions, Azerbaijanis constituted the majority: Vardenis, Massis and Amasya. They made up a significant portion in the Zangezur corridor, and this problem was resolved. It didn't come to us as a gift from the heavens. Our movement solved this problem, the national liberation struggle of our people, the Armenian national movement and its military wing, the self-defense units of Erkrapa. The same is true in Artsakh. Today, the entire territory of Artsakh, and much more, is in the hands of Armenians.
In the shocking footage, which became public after being published by blogger Albert Isakov, Levon Ter-Petrosyan reveals the essence of a premeditated and brutal campaign aimed at the destruction and expulsion of Azerbaijanis from their historical lands.
I think Ter-Petrosyan understood that a democracy movement isn't going to bring down the Soviet Union. You know, people don't go out to the square to bring down the USSR and face tanks for democracy, but for nationalism they do nationalism. And so the Karabakh Committee, which tried to bring Karabakh from under Azerbaijani control, that was trying to convince Moscow to move it to Armenian control. He joined this organization because he understood that what they had, this nationalism, could be a way to get Armenia out of the Soviet Union.
The speech of the first Armenian president lifts the veil on what has long been concealed, offering insight into the fact that many of the ideas he discusses were not coincidental, but rather part of a much deeper ideology.
Levon Ter-Petrosyan, using the phrase, "the centuries-old dream of the Armenian people," openly acknowledges the involvement of Armenian society in the ethnic cleansing of Azerbaijanis and justifies it as a necessary part of the liberation of Armenia and Karabakh. The ethnic cleansing that unfolded during that period became an integral part of this process, and Ter-Petrosyan's words were merely a logical continuation of the actions of those who, in his view, cleansed Armenia of representatives of other nations. Recently, on the same channel, I found a video in which the statement of the chairman of the Erkrapa organization, Vazgen Sarkisyan, who was also present at the meeting, is featured.
Today, here, the President of the Republic allowed himself to say things, especially that part of his speech related to what he was saying about Agdam. Imagine what would happen in the international press. It will be common that the President of the Republic at a military meeting announced that Agdam had been captured. I wouldn't talk about it, but as a former journalist, I know that our brother loves sensationalism. I ask everyone present to take this into account.
Ethnic Azerbaijanis, who were the largest national minority in the Soviet Republic of Armenia, became the first victims of a policy aimed at creating a monoethnic state.
We see and hear the acting president, neither ex nor to be, not the political scientist, not the expert, not the scholar who may have private opinion, acting president, the one in the office. It matters very much that at the time of recording, he was the head of state. And if such statements are made by a state leader, then, regardless whether it's meant for public or not, anything that is said during the presidential tenure fully reflects the official policy.
Armenian armed formations that occupied parts of Azerbaijan's territory didn't limit themselves to ethnic cleansing of the local population. Through all 3 decades of occupation, a systematic policy of destruction and annihilation was implemented aimed at eradicating Azerbaijan's cultural and historical identity.
I was in Khankendi, Shusha, Agdam, many places in Karabakh during the occupation, visit all sorts of new settlements by Syrian and Lebanese Armenians that moved there. So in fact, one Armenian official said to me during the visit, when they said that they showed the destruction of Agdam, which was basically every house was destroyed. And what wasn't destroyed all through Karabakh, they took the roofs out of the home so that at least the snow and wind and if they didn't take the time to actually destroy the house, at least it would be destroyed by nature, right? And they said this will prevent the Azerbaijanis from ever coming back. The minute they see they have absolutely not one home standing, they will never dream of coming back. Of course, they were wrong, and we're seeing the great return.
For many years, the truce was concealed with the help of the Armenian diaspora, which supported the development of revanchism both financially and with fighters. Some of the most successful and actually cruelest militants were headed by Armenians, not from Armenia, but from the diaspora.
So it was way beyond, it was also money, it was the geopolitical support. I mean, think about, Section 907, Azerbaijan is invaded, loses 20% of its territory, 1 million of its people are kicked out of its home, and Azerbaijan gets sanctioned by the United States. And this was due to the very clever planning work of the American Armenian.
The most shocking aspect of this video is that Levon Ter-Petrosyan seemingly feels no remorse. The first president of Armenia openly admits that the Armenians living in Baku were sacrificed for the great idea. But that revelation is silent about how these same people were refused acceptance in Armenia and how they were illegally resettled in Karabakh, which was occupied at that time.
The same phenomenon can be observed in post-Soviet Armenia, where there were individuals who opposed this, but they were treated as outcasts, marginalized from the public life of Armenia, and became pariahs subject to persecution. Some people were deprived of their lives and health. For example, Vanyan, a well-known human rights defender. Unfortunately, just as no genuine repentance has taken place, especially regarding Khojaly, very few are aware of it in Armenia, it is denied, and discussions on the topic are effectively avoided.
It's quite logical to assume that this video is just the tip of the iceberg. It's terrifying to imagine what might be hidden in the remaining archives and footage from that period. According to Ter-Petrosyan's statements, it's clear that his government laid the foundations for the fascist ideology of modern Armenia, which bore striking similarities to the program of the German Nazis, and at times even suppressed in terms of cynicism and misanthropy.
Well, anything. You name it. Anything. Do you remember how the leaders of the puppet junta in Khankendi rushed to burn tons of papers in September 2023? What were they destroying? This actually refreshes in my memory the hasty burning and blowing up the gas chambers by the Nazis in Auschwitz just before the Soviets entered there. Removing all the traces. So this leaked video with LTP is indeed just the top of the iceberg, and much more is there to be uncovered.
I've never seen anyone anywhere in the Armenian political spectrum anyone, even the most so-called pro-peace, so-called pro-West, any voice that wanted, that felt that Armenia or assessed Armenia's occupation of Azerbaijan as unjust, or had even any empathy for the million refugees that were created from this crisis, from this war, from this occupation. But I've never heard anywhere in the political spectrum in Armenia anyone who actually thought that they should withdraw from the Azerbaijani territories they held. And even Petrosyan, his goal was to keep Greater Karabakh and maybe release some of the occupied districts that were outside of Karabakh, but there was never any negotiation.
One thing became absolutely clear: the changing leadership of Armenia wasn't focused on a peaceful resolution of the conflict with Azerbaijan. Levon Petrosyan's admission of the need to negotiate for the sake of negotiations was demonstrated in practice. For much of the period leading up to the 2020 war, negotiations played a critical but ultimately instrumental role for Armenia. These talks were framed as a genuine pursuit of peace, allowing Armenia to present itself to the international community as actively seeking resolution. However, Azerbaijan's realization that these negotiations were largely a process for the sake of process, rather than a genuine effort to settle the conflict, was key to its success in the 2020 war, resulted in restoration of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan.